I didn't know you were actually handicapped. The words sliced through the warm air of the Bluebird Cafe like a knife. A caption might have read, "Poor deaf girl rejected on a blind date," until a single dad at the next table changed 3 lives with his hands alone. Jessica sat by herself, checking her phone for the 5th time in 20 minutes. Her elegant red dress, chosen so carefully, now felt like a useless suit of armor, offering no protection from the humiliation she could feel closing in. Rain pounded against the cafe windows, but it couldn't drown out the sound of her own breaking heart when the man sitting across from her finally spoke those awful words. "I didn't know you were actually handicapped." In that moment, as tears burned behind her eyes, she never imagined that a stranger's hands would soon speak the words her heart had needed for years. "You deserve better." Before we go on, the narrator's voice would usually ask, "Where in the world are you watching from?" We love seeing how far our stories travel. But inside the Bluebird Cafe, the only thing traveling was cruelty. "Oh, wait. Are you deaf?" the man Brandon demanded. His voice cut through the soft clatter of dishes and muted jazz. His expression twisted, not with surprise, but with something far uglier, unfiltered disgust. Jessica's fingers tightened around her water glass until her knuckles went white. She had already waited 45 minutes. 45 minutes of trying to stay hopeful as other diners glanced at her with quiet pity. 45 minutes of pretending she didn't notice the sideways looks, and now this. "I have moderate to severe hearing loss," she answered, her voice mostly steady despite the slight tremble in her hands. "We're hearing aids. I mentioned that in my profile." "You said you had hearing difficulties," Brandon interrupted, his fingers curling into mocking air quotes. "I thought you meant, like, you'd sometimes need things repeated." "I didn't know you were actually—" He stopped, his eyes flicking to her ears where the discreet hearing aids caught the light. The word he finally chose felt like a slap. Handicapped. At a corner booth only a few feet away, Matthew felt his jaw clench until his teeth hurt. His 6-year-old daughter, Olivia, had stopped coloring. Her small hands hovered over the page, frozen as she watched what was happening. "Daddy," Olivia signed, movements small, worried. "Why is that man being mean to the pretty lady?" Matthew's hands trembled slightly as he replied in sign. "Some people don't understand, sweetheart. Some people are just—" He searched for a gentle word. "Unkind." Brandon wasn't done. He was already scrolling through his phone as if Jessica had become invisible, her pain nothing more than background noise. "Look, this isn't what I signed up for," he said loudly, not even trying to be discreet. Several nearby diners turned to look. "I can't deal with this. Do you know how exhausting it would be having to repeat everything? Always making sure you can hear in restaurants? My friends would never stop roasting me, dating someone who can't even hear properly." Jessica straightened her back, and in that instant, Matthew saw something powerful in her posture, dignity, holding itself together even as tears threatened. "I'm a pediatric nurse," Jessica said quietly. "I'm on a graduated university with honors. I speak 3 languages. My hearing loss doesn't define my value as a person." Brandon pushed back his chair, the scraping sound harsh and ugly. "No offense, but I have standards," he said. "This is why people should be honest in their profiles. Wasting my Friday night because you couldn't be upfront about being disabled." The word disabled hung in the air like poison. Matthew was on his feet before his brain had fully decided what to do. Olivia gasped softly as he stood, but he didn't walk toward Brandon. That would have been predictable. Instead, he stepped directly in front of Jessica's table, turning his back on Brandon, who was already heading toward the door. Matthew's hands began to move. His signing was smooth, deliberate, each gesture flowing into the next like a well-rehearsed dance, one he'd practiced 1,000 times with his daughter. His fingers painted words in the air, his face carrying the emotion his voice didn't need to. "You deserve so much better than someone who can't see your worth." Jessica's breath caught. Her eyes, which had been shining with unshed tears, widened in shock. This stranger, this man she had never seen before, was signing to her. Not clumsily, not as a show. He was truly speaking her language. The silent language Brandon had just mocked, the language that lived in the spaces between sounds. At the door, Brandon paused, frowning. "You know that sign language stuff," he scoffed. "Of figures, birds of a feather, right? You two deserve each other." The door slammed behind him, leaving behind the echo of his ignorance and the faint jazz playing softly over the speakers. Matthew turned back to Jessica. For a moment, they simply looked at one another. She saw kindness in his eyes, real, unguarded kindness. He saw strength in hers, shining through the pain Brandon had tried to inflict. May I?" Matthew gestured toward the empty chair across from her. Jessica nodded, still too stunned to say much. As he sat down, a small figure appeared beside him, Olivia, clutching her coloring book, her own hearing aids glinting under the warm cafe lights. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Matthew said aloud while signing at the same time. Some people show you exactly who they are very quickly. Honestly, he did you a favor by leaving." Jessica's gaze shifted to Olivia, watching how the little girl's eyes followed their hands with intense focus. She understood this silent conversation. "Is she?" Jessica began softly. "This is my daughter, Olivia," Matthew replied, both signing and speaking. "Now, she's been gradually losing her hearing since she was 3. We're learning this journey together." He didn't say struggle or problem. He said journey. That choice of word made something shift gently inside Jessica's chest. Here was a father who didn't see his daughter's deafness as a tragedy, but simply as a part of who she was. "Hi," Olivia signed shyly, stepping closer. "You're pretty." That man was mean. Daddy says mean people are just scared of things they don't understand. A laugh bubbled up in Jessica's chest, unexpected, genuine, and her face lit up as she signed back. "Thank you, sweetheart. You're pretty too. I love your rainbow shirt. Is that a dinosaur on it?" Olivia's whole face brightened. "It's a brachiosaurus. Do you know the sign for dinosaur?" She eagerly demonstrated with her small hands. Matthew watched them interact, feeling something warm unfold slowly inside him. He hadn't seen Olivia connect with someone new this quickly since Angela. The thought of his late wife brought the familiar ache, but it wasn't as sharp as it once had been. True. 2 years had passed since the morning a drunk driver took her life, leaving Matthew to navigate single fatherhood and Olivia's progressive hearing loss alone. He had learned sign language out of sheer necessity at first, staying up late, watching online videos, practicing in the mirror, his fingers clumsy and unsure. Over time, necessity had turned into something beautiful, a secret shared language between father and daughter. A way of saying I love you without needing sound. "You sign beautifully," Jessica said, pulling Matthew from his thoughts. "How long have you been learning?" 3 years now," he replied. Since Olivia's diagnosis, at first it felt overwhelming. I remember sitting in the audiologist's office, hearing them talk about progressive hearing loss, and it felt like the world was ending. He looked at Olivia, who was now proudly showing Jessica her coloring book. "Then I looked at her," he continued, "and realized it wasn't an ending, just a different beginning." Jessica's eyes shimmered. "Most people don't see it that way," she said. "My ex certainly didn't. He said my hearing loss made everything too complicated." She rolled her eyes. That was his favorite word. Complicated. "Yes, tell me." Sometimes Olivia signed when it's really noisy and I turn my hearing aids off. "It's like having a superpower. I can make all the loud things quiet. Then Daddy and I talk with our hands, and it's like we have a magic language that not everyone knows." Matthew's throat tightened. Leave it to his daughter to find magic where others only saw limitation. "I know exactly what you mean," Jessica signed. "When I was in nursing school, after I lost most of my hearing, I thought my career was over. But now I work with children who are scared of hospitals. When I show them my hearing aids and teach them a few signs, they see I'm different too, and suddenly they're not so scared anymore." "You're a nurse?" Olivia's hands moved excitedly. "You help sick kids? That's like being a superhero." Jessica laughed again, and Matthew realized he could easily get used to seeing that laugh. Joy transformed her face, sweeping away the shadows Brandon had tried to leave there. "I almost didn't come tonight," Jessica admitted, her hands stilled for a moment over the table. "This was my first attempt at dating in 2 years. I spent 3 hours getting ready, practicing what I'd say, hoping this time would be different. When he was late, I blamed traffic. When he stayed on his phone, I told myself maybe he was nervous. I'm very good at making excuses for people who don't deserve them." Matthew reached across the table, not touching her, just placing his hand palm up on the worn surface. "An offer, not a demand. We all do that sometimes," he said. We accept less than we deserve because we think it's better than being alone. But being alone isn't the worst thing." He looked into her eyes. Being with someone who makes you feel alone? That's worse. Jessica stared at his hand for a long moment, then gently laid her hand over it. Her fingers were warm and steady despite everything she'd just suffered. Daddy, Olivia signed with her free hand. Are you making a friend? I hope so. Matthew signed back, his eyes still on Jessica's. An older woman with silver hair, the cafe manager, walked over. She made sure to face Jessica directly so her lips were easy to read. Excuse me, she said kindly. I saw what happened earlier. That man's behavior was completely unacceptable. Your meals tonight, all three of you, are on the house. It's the least we can do. Matthew started to object, but the manager held up her hand. Oh, please, she insisted. That young woman shouldn't have her evening ruined by one person's ignorance. And sir, what you did standing up for a stranger like that, we need more of that in this world. When she left, Jessica gave Matthew's hand a gentle squeeze. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Stand up for me, I mean. Yes, I did, Matthew replied simply. Olivia is watching. She's learning how people are supposed to treat each other. What kind of father would I be if I let her think that man's behavior was okay? He smiled slightly, a soft curve of his lips. Besides, he added, anyone who can't see how extraordinary you are needs glasses more than you need hearing aids. Jessica laughed, really laughed, for the third time that night. Olivia clapped in delight. Can I ask you something? Jessica signed, her movements a bit hesitant. Your wife, Olivia's mom, is she? Matthew's smile dimmed but didn't vanish. Angela died 2 years ago, he said softly. The drunk driver hit her car early one morning. She never made it home. He paused, then added, she would have loved you. She was studying to be a sign language interpreter when Olivia was diagnosed. She wanted our daughter to know she was perfect exactly as she was. She sounds wonderful, Jessica signed, her expression tender. She was, Matthew replied. And she would have absolutely destroyed that man with words for how he treated you. She called it educational decimation, tearing down ignorance with surgical precision. Daddy tells stories about Mommy, Olivia signed, following the conversation easily. She's an angel now. That's why her name was Angela. She watches us from heaven and makes sure we're okay. That's right, sweetheart, Matthew said. Their food arrived, Matthew and Olivia's usual favorites. For Jessica, the manager had sent out the cafe's signature pasta dish unasked. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Jessica taught Olivia new signs, animals, colors, food. Matthew shared stories from Olivia's school, how she was the only deaf student in her class, and how her classmates had started learning basic signs so they could talk to her. Last week, Matthew said, grinning, her whole class signed happy birthday to her during assembly. 22 first graders all signing together. Her teacher had been secretly practicing with them for weeks. I may have cried more than was dignified. Her daddy cried so much, Olivia added with blunt 6-year-old honesty. The principal thought he was sick. Jessica shared stories of her own. The little boy with cochlear implants who'd been terrified of his MRI until she showed him her hearing aids and taught him the sign for Braille. The teenage girl with progressive hearing loss who had tried to end her life, and how Jessica sat with her for hours, showing videos of deaf dancers, deaf doctors, deaf athletes. Proof that her life wasn't over, just different. That's why I put it in my dating profile, Jessica explained. In my hearing loss, I wanted to be honest to avoid exactly what happened tonight. But I guess some people only see what they want to see. His loss, Matthew signed firmly. His complete, absolute, catastrophic loss. As the evening wore on, the cafe slowly emptied. Olivia eventually slid into the seat beside Jessica, showing her every page of her coloring book, explaining each drawing and its story. Jessica listened and watched with real interest, asking questions and making suggestions. She doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly, Matthew signed quietly while Olivia was distracted choosing a crayon. She's been shy since Angela, since we lost her mom. But with you, it's like she recognizes something, a kindred spirit. Jessica signed back. We're part of the same tribe, she and I. The beautiful Silence tribe. Matthew had never thought of it that way, but as he watched Jessica and Olivia sign and laugh together, he understood. They shared something deeper than hearing loss. They shared the knowledge that different doesn't mean less. It's getting late, Matthew said at last, noticing Olivia's signs growing slower as she yawned. It's past her bedtime, of course, Jessica said, starting to stand. Thank you for... Everything. For showing me that not everyone is like Brandon. Wait, Matthew said, pulling out his phone. Olivia and I get breakfast every Saturday at 9. Magnolia Pancake House on Cherry Street. Best chocolate chip pancakes in Burlington, and it's quiet enough to talk easily. Would you like to join us tomorrow? Jessica hesitated for a second, and Matthew felt his heart jump. Had he pushed too fast? Oh, please come, Olivia sighed sleepily. I want to show you my butterfly book, and Daddy tells the worst jokes, but I think you'll laugh anyway. Hey, Matthew protested, but he was smiling. Jessica looked between them. The father who had defended her dignity without being asked, and the little girl who saw her hearing aids as a connection, not a defect. Something long closed inside her chest slowly cracked open. I love chocolate chip pancakes, she signed to Olivia. Then to Matthew, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, he confirmed, trying not to grin too widely as she typed her number into his phone. Outside, in the drizzle, Matthew helped Olivia into her raincoat, checking her hearing aids with practiced ease, making sure they were protected without making a big fuss. Olivia tilted her head automatically to help it. Jessica watched the gentle routine, feeling something like longing mixed with gratitude. Thank you, she said at the door, for reminding me I deserve better. Oh, you don't actually need that reminder, Matthew said softly. You just needed someone else to see what was already true. They parted in the parking lot as the rain softened to mist. In her own car, Jessica sat quietly for a moment before turning on the engine. She touched the small pearl necklace at her throat, a gift from her grandmother, who had also been deaf. Never let anyone make you feel less than whole. Her grandmother had signed to her years ago. You're complete exactly as you are. The right person won't see your deafness as something to overcome. They'll see it as part of your story, part of what makes you you. She thought those were just comforting words. But tonight, watching Matthew's hands shape sentences in the air, watching him show his daughter that hearing loss was a journey, not a tragedy, she finally understood. Saturday morning arrived grey and drizzly, but inside Magnolia Pancake House it was warm and bright. Matthew and Olivia got there 15 minutes early. Olivia insisted they claim their favorite table by the window. She'd brought her butterfly book and had practiced the sign for each species, eager to show Jessica. At exactly 9, Jessica walked in, shaking raindrops from her umbrella. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking far more relaxed than the glamorous woman in the red dress from the night before. Olivia bounced in her seat when she saw her. You came, Olivia signed excitedly. I promised, didn't I? Jessica signed back, sliding into the booth. Breakfast was relaxed and natural. They talked about everything and nothing. Favorite movies. Jessica loved old musicals, which thrilled Olivia because they're pretty even without sound. Kitchen disasters. Matthew once somehow set spaghetti on fire, which Jessica insisted shouldn't even be possible. Childhood pets. Jessica had a deaf cat named Beethoven. When Matthew went to pay the bill, insisting despite Jessica's objections, Olivia tugged on Jessica's sleeve. Can I tell you something? She signed. Always, Jessica replied. Daddy hasn't smiled this much since Mummy went to heaven, Olivia signed seriously. I think you make him happy. Jessica felt tears sting her eyes. He makes me happy too, she signed back. Good, Olivia replied firmly. Then you should keep having breakfast with us. One breakfast turned into 2, then 3, until it became their unspoken Saturday tradition. Within a month, Jessica was joining them for Wednesday dinners. Within 2, she was sitting in the audience at Olivia's school play, watching the little girl perform with both spoken lines and sign language. When the entire auditorium gave both regular applause and silent applause, hands waving in the air, tears streamed down Jessica's face. At home, she turned science into games, teaching Olivia basic anatomy using stuffed animals and drawings. Matthew turned construction into play, helping them build increasingly elaborate blanket forts in his living room. Together they invented private signs, one for a pancake Saturday, one for a butterfly friend, Olivia's nickname for Jessica, and one sign that meant our person, which Matthew used for both Jessica and Olivia. 3 months after the night at the cafe, Matthew was driving Jessica home after dinner when she suddenly said, "Pull over." Concerned, he pulled into an empty parking lot immediately. Are you okay? Did I? She cut him off by leaning across the console and kissing him. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, she sighed, I love you. I've been wanting to say it for weeks, but I was scared. Scared I was imagining things. Scared you were just being kind." Matthew kissed her again. Then he leaned back and signed slowly, each motion clear in the glow of the street lamp. "I love you too. Not because you need someone to protect you. You don't. Not just because Olivia loves you, though she absolutely does. I love you because you see the world the way we do. You've shown us that our little family isn't broken. We were just waiting for the right person to make us complete." 6 months later, on a bright September afternoon that looked nothing like the rainy night they met, Matthew proposed. He did it at the Bluebird Cafe. He had coordinated with the staff. When he dropped to one knee at their old table, the room was full of friends and family. "Here." He signed his proposal, his hand steady despite his racing heart. "You taught me that love doesn't need sound to be heard. Will you marry me?" Olivia stood proudly beside him, holding a sign that read, "I say yes. I already picked my flower girl dress." Through happy tears, Jessica signed back, "Yes." 1,000 times yes. Their wedding the following spring at Waterfront Park was unlike anything their guests had ever seen. Every word was both spoken and signed. Olivia, as flower girl, signed a poem about family that she had written herself. Matthew's vows left not a dry eye. "Jessica, you walked into our lives when I thought we were done growing. You showed us we were wrong. You didn't fill a hole. You expanded our capacity for joy. You've taught Olivia that her differences are superpowers. You've taught me that the best conversations can happen in silence. You've shown us that family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other every day exactly as we are." Jessica's vows were just as powerful. "Matthew, Olivia, you saved me on a night when I believed I wasn't enough. You showed me that the right people don't see my deafness as an obstacle to overcome, but as a part of my story to cherish. You've given me a family that speaks my language, not just ASL, but the language of unconditional acceptance. I promise to love you both with my hands, my heart, and every piece of who I am." During the reception, Matthew's best man shared something that had everyone reaching for tissues. After that night at the cafe, Matthew had started a small support group for single parents of children with hearing loss. What began as 5 people meeting in his living room had grown to more than 50 families. They met monthly, sharing resources, teaching each other signs, building a community where no one had to walk the journey alone. Matthew could have walked out that night, the best man said. Instead, he stood up, and he's been standing up ever since, for his daughter, for Jessica, and for every family who's ever felt alone. Jessica, meanwhile, began volunteering at the Children's Hospital, working specifically with kids adjusting to hearing loss. She sat with them, showed them her hearing aids, taught them signs, and shared her story, the night someone tried to make her feel worthless, and how that moment led her to a family who made her feel priceless. "A different doesn't mean broken," she would tell them, signing each word as she spoke. "It just means you experience the world in your own beautiful way." One day, a 12-year-old girl who'd recently lost her hearing in an accident asked Jessica, "Will anyone ever love me now?" Jessica took out her phone and showed her a photo from the wedding. Matthew signing his vows, Olivia beaming between them. Guests in the background, all signing. "The right person won't love you despite your differences," Jessica said gently. "They'll love you including them, because of them, with them. Your deafness isn't something to get over. It's part of your story, and your story deserves love." 5 years after that night at the Bluebird Cafe, 11-year-old Olivia stood in front of her 6th grade class to give a presentation about heroes. Confident and fluent in ASL, she signed as she spoke. "Well, some people think being deaf means something is missing," she said. "But in my family, being deaf brought us together. It gave me a dad who learned a whole new language for me. It brought me Jessica, I call her Mom now, who shows me every day that our differences make us special, not less." She clicked to the next slide, a photo from their support group picnic, more than 100 people signing together in the park. "My family started because one mean man couldn't see how amazing Jessica was," Olivia continued. "But my dad did. He saw her worth when she didn't see it herself." Now we help other families see that hearing loss isn't the end of the story. It's just a different chapter. Later, the teacher told Matthew and Jessica that there hadn't been a dry eye in the classroom. Several parents called afterward, asking about the support group, sign language classes, and how to better support their own children. That evening at home, Matthew, Jessica, Olivia, and now 2-year-old Marcus sat around the dinner table. Marcus was already learning to sign before he could speak clearly. Do you think Brandon ever realizes what he missed? Olivia asked suddenly. Matthew and Jessica exchanged a glance. They almost never said his name, referring to that memory simply as of that night. I hope he learned to see people more clearly, Jessica said after a moment. But honestly, sweetheart, I'm grateful for his ignorance. Grateful. Olivia signed confused. If he pretended he was okay with my deafness, Jessica explained, I might have spent months or years with the wrong person. His cruelty pushed me away from him and straight toward you and your dad. It led me to our family. Matthew reached for Jessica's hand. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, he said. That night at the cafe, I thought I was just standing up for a stranger. For a stranger. I had no idea I was standing up for our future. The Bluebird Cafe still keeps their old corner booth reserved when they come in. The manager, now a friend, always smiles when she sees them on their anniversary. A table for 4? She asks, grinning at little Marcus in his high chair, already signing Cookie. Hopefully, Matthew says with a playful shrug. A table for family. Jessica squeezes his hand. They built something beautiful from a night of humiliation, not in spite of their challenges, but through the way they chose to face those challenges together. Their home is filled with both laughter and quiet. Conversations happen in gestures and expressions, with love that doesn't need sound to be heard. Sometimes, late at night, after the kids are asleep, Matthew and Jessica sit together on the porch, signing in the dark. Their hands glow in the soft porch light, visible only to each other. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stood up that night? Matthew signed once. Jessica thought for a few seconds, then signed back. I would have gone home and cried, maybe given up on dating again. I would have survived, but I wouldn't have lived. Not like this. And us? He asked. We still would have found each other, she signed with certainty. Maybe not that night. Maybe not at the Bluebird Cafe. But love like this, it finds a way. Their story started to spread. The local news did a feature on their support group. The Bluebird Cafe put up a small plaque at their booth, where love speaks louder than words. Parents of deaf children from all over reached out, looking for advice, comfort, community. Matthew expanded his construction business, making sure his sites were accessible and deaf-friendly. He hired deaf contractors and proved that a construction site doesn't require hearing. It requires communication and respect. Jessica became the hospital's first deaf services coordinator, creating programs to make medical care accessible to patients with hearing loss. At the center of all of it was their family, a living reminder that love doesn't discriminate by ability, that the strongest families are built on acceptance, and that sometimes the one person who sees your worth when the world doesn't ends up becoming your whole world. One day Olivia came to Jessica with a new idea. Teach me a new sign, she said. I want to create one that means our family, something just for us. Together they invented it, a sign combining different, beautiful, and together. It became their special family sign, the one they used to end every conversation, every good night, every goodbye. A perfectly unique, Jessica once translated it to a curious friend. That's us, Olivia said proudly. Perfectly unique. In the end, that rainy night at the Bluebird Cafe wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything. Brandon's cruelty made space for something real. His inability to see Jessica's worth led her straight to people who saw nothing but worth in her. Matthew often thought about the moment he stood at her table and signed those 3 simple words. You deserve better. He'd meant them as basic kindness, comfort. He hadn't realized he was signing the opening line of their love story. Jessica, who had walked into the cafe expecting a pleasant dinner at best, walked out with the first pages of a new life. She finally understood what her grandmother had always known. The right people don't see your differences as flaws to fix. They see them as part of your constellation, the unique pattern that makes you who you are. The Bluebird Cafe still serves the best coffee in Burlington. Couples still meet there for first dates. Hearts still break there, and hearts still heal there. But in one corner booth, where a single father once stood up for a stranger's dignity, where small hands once signed your pretty to a woman who'd just been called handicapped, love proved that it doesn't need sound to be heard. In that booth, miracles happen, and they still happen every time someone chooses to see worth where others see weakness. Every time someone stands up for a stranger. Every time someone signs or says, in any language, you deserve better. And sometimes on rare and beautiful days, better is exactly what they find. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love has no barriers, that families are formed in many different ways, and that the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they are perfectly unique, that their differences are their strength, that the right people will love every part of who they are. In a world where you can be anything, be the person who stands up, who signs, you deserve better, who sees worth where others don't, because that's how real love stories begin.